Some people leave fingerprints on your life, others leave scars. Sometimes a single person may leave both. Fengxian doesn't get much screen time in the Apothecary Diaries. Most people remember her as Lakan's lover, others as Maomao's mother. But I think she's much more than that, because even after illness confines her to a single room, she continues shaping the lives of the people around her. She was the first face Lakan ever saw, the face that haunted Maomao's nightmares. Her tragedy set Lakan on the path to power, and is the reason Maomao hides from the world. Fengxian may barely speak, but few characters leave as big a mark as she does on the story. It was over a game of Go or Shogi, and for the first time in his life, someone had actually beaten him. Lakan wasn't upset but amused. He tilted his head back and laughed, and when he lifted up his head, there she was. Her face was fully visible, which is surprising both to us and to him, because he has face blindness. Now he had a face he could see, and he was in love. Here's the reason why this is important. Lakan had never seen a face before. In his backstory, he talks about how he couldn't recognize faces. He often got his mother and nanny mixed up when he was little because of it. The world must have been a disorienting place for him because he was caught somewhere between sight and the lack of it. Luomen taught him how to orient himself in the world, at least as pertaining to people, using things he could recognize such as their build, their voices, and what he was good at, which was board games. So he saw random people as ghost stones, and those he was more acquainted with or of high rank as chess pieces. When he first sees Fengxian, he says, "So that's what a human face looks like." And you see the people around Fengxian as blurs with stones or chess pieces for faces. It felt less like a coincidence and more like fate, and it was in a sense a gift that kept on giving because Fengxian gave him Maomao, the only other face he could see. Now Maomao doesn't have Lakan's eyesight problems, so she could see Fengxian just fine, but her experience was vastly different from his. For starters, Fengxian was the first face she ever saw because she's her mother, but her experience was far from the beauty and miracle Lakan experienced. We are shown a sight from when she was a baby, and Fengxian hovered over her with a knife, sorrow, despair, and malice written all over her face. Maomao, who had been crying, stops and stares at her. Perhaps she still didn't know how to be afraid, but it's a scene that still gives her nightmares many years later. It's such a tragic scene because we know there's a lot of nuance to Fengxian, and Maomao knows it too, because we see how she relates with her. She nurses her and makes her medicine. She knows how illness has ravished her face, the same face that first drew Lakan's attention. Maomao doesn't hate her mother or her face, but her mother's face traumatized her, so there's some sort of dichotomy to it. Without Fengxian's heartbreak, Maomao wouldn't have a face to terrorize her dreams or to pity in her waking. And so, in a way, Fengxian's face was one person's salvation, an entry into sight, while for the other, it was a recurring nightmare. After Fengxian conceived and had had Maomao, life was very difficult for her to say the least, but her hardship was in a sense a loss for both Lakan and Maomao. Lakan lost the love of his life, while Maomao lost her mother, and they respond to it differently. Lakan spiraled into grief and, strangely, desire. He had always been laid back, partially because he had been neglected as a child, and he was also technically disinherited since his half-brothers were preferred over him. But there was something about learning about losing Fengxian and his child that made him snap. Numerous letters had been sent to his family home, and none were opened except for the last one. But it was all just to show that his family didn't care to forward him the letters, or at least let him know that he had received correspondence. So when he arrived, 3 years had passed. He saw the letters, and he saw what was in the little bag, and thought Fengxian and his child were dead, and we see him weep bitterly. But he doesn't stay in a state of feeling sorry for himself. He overthrows his family and rises in power, not because he is power hungry, but because he knows what it felt like to be helpless, and he never wanted to feel that way again. While losing Fengxian propels Lakan to power, it pushes Maomao in the opposite direction. She isolates and sort of minimizes herself, especially when it comes to emotions. Fengxian acted on hope. She believed that love could nurture her future, but her hope shattered her. The Maomao we first meet wants nothing other than making medicine and testing poisons. Her nonchalance when she's kidnapped and taken to the rear palace isn't just part of her personality, it's a survival mechanism. She expects terrible things to happen. Of course, she tries to prevent it in her own way, like what she does with the freckles, but still, she expects life to be unfair. And so when it is, she just shrugs it off. Maomao builds up emotional walls. She doesn't trust easily, and she's rarely vulnerable. I think it's largely in part because of what Fengxian has become. She is heartbroken at her mother's fate and does her best to protect herself from it. While Fengxian's tragedy propelled them to go in different directions, both Lakan and Maomao were striving for the same thing, to protect themselves. It's very common for characters who've lost a loved one to become cold, but that's not what happened here. Fengxian didn't destroy Lakan and Maomao's ability to love, rather she changed the way they expressed it. While it was a relief for Lakan to find out that his child was alive and in the care of his uncle, he was still devastated that she was far away from him. He wanted his little girl, and in his eagerness to get her back, he came across as creepy to Maomao, which in a way scarred her for life. And this is just Lakan's nature. He's very expressive with his affection. We see it when he gets reunited with Fengxian. He runs to her, and he weeps. It doesn't matter that she probably didn't have much time left. He can't see the scars of illness, just the picture-perfect Fengxian he had fallen in love with all those years ago. Maomao, on the other hand, insists that she left emotions like love in her mother's womb. But the story proves her wrong. She nurses Fengxian. She dances to celebrate her being bought out. She even orchestrates her parents' reunion in a way. She's not the type to make grand gestures, but her actions constantly show just how much she loves. Lakan loves openly, while Maomao loves quietly. One runs and crawls towards the people he loves. The other insists she doesn't care while helping them anyway. They're opposites, but their ways of loving were shaped by the same woman. She changed their paths. Fengxian barely appears in the Apothecary Diaries, and yet, without her, Lakan never becomes the man he is. Maomao never becomes the woman we know. One inherited the memory of her defiant look, while the other inherited the memory of her despair. Their journeys couldn't be more different, but both began with the same woman. That's what makes Fengxian unforgettable. Not because she changed the world, but she changed the people who would. If you enjoyed this tragic love story, share it with someone who might enjoy it, like the video and leave a comment. Those simple things really help videos like this reach more people who might enjoy them. And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!